in the Department of Pediatrics and the co-founder of the Mount Sinai Parenting Center. And today I'm going to answer some questions about the transition back to school. Anything that you feel safe allowing them to use to interact online is going to be much more important right now, as it has been for the past 6 months. And other things that you can do, especially for younger kids, is to accept that FaceTime isn't that fun for some people, but being able to connect is super important. So sometimes you just lower the expectation that there has to be an interaction, and you can just kind of be in the same room doing an art project together, or feel like you're in the same room because you've got the FaceTime on, and you can kind of chat with each other if you feel like it, but there's no pressure to have a conversation. As kids get older, they're going to tell you how they can connect with their friends. It may be through a video game. It may be through doing an exercise class together or watching a movie together. It may be that they just want to talk or text. Giving space for what may be feeling like too much screen time when it comes to socializing is going to be important, as long as you obviously make sure it doesn't happen during mealtime or when they're going outside or trying to get fresh air or focusing on their work. So before we talk to our kids about going back to school, we have to check in with how we feel. Take a deep breath, 4 count in, 4 counts out, to make sure that we're not imposing our own anxiety onto the conversation. And then we're coming in a space where we can receive what they're feeling and help them get through this experience. So if they're feeling anxious, one thing to really focus on is don't try to get rid of the anxiety. Welcome the anxiety. Say, it makes sense that you feel that way. You haven't been back to school in a really long time. And there's been so much information out there about staying away from people. So it makes sense that you're nervous about going back. Then after you've kind of validated that feeling, say, I'm making sure that you're safe, or I wouldn't send you back. And here's what information we have. And remind them what coronavirus is. Depending on their age, more information, because we haven't talked about it in a long time. Sometimes it feels like, well, I explained what it was. There's been a pandemic for many months now, they know, but we haven't actually named it again. So remind them what it is, ask them what they think it is, let them know why it's okay to go back to school now, and what precautions the school is taking to protect the teachers, the grown-ups, their bodies, but emphasize taking care of others because you are not worried about them. Well, it has been a long time without practicing separation. So it makes sense that people might be feeling concerned that separation is going to be extra difficult. It's natural to feel clingier. These feelings are not going to go anywhere by telling kids not to feel them. So again, you want to welcome that feeling and say, you might feel, in fact, before you do that, you might check in with how they are feeling about separating. You know, we haven't been apart in a really long time. I wonder how it's feeling for you to go back to school. Pause, find out how they actually think they feel. And then if they're saying that they might worry about that separation, then you can say, yeah, that makes sense. What do you think we should do about that? And you can come up with some kind of ritual. For younger children, it can be the traditional kissing hand ritual, which is based on the book. You can give little kisses on each hand after they're washed, and because you're one family, and they can put their hands on their, let's change it from cheeks because it's COVID. So they can put their hands around themselves, give themselves a hug, and remember that that kiss is hugging them. Mommy loves me, or daddy loves me, or caregiver loves me. If they're older, you just talk about it. Ask them, you know, what kind of thing they can do during the day to remind themselves they've got this. And remember, they might not know how they're going to feel, and they might be super excited or super nervous and get there, and it's a completely different thing. Either way, you let them know, I know you've got this. Even if it's going to be really, really hard at first, I know you're going to get through it. again, a really natural concern. One thing to do is practice play, and this should be in a light way, how to read people's emotions and communication, how to listen when someone's in a mask. You can play a game at home where everybody's wearing masks, and maybe you each have to play a guessing game about what they're trying to say when they're not talking, they're just using their body language. Because we do depend a lot on facial expressions and mouths to learn and to pick up cues, and we're not going to have those. So helping them readjust how they communicate and how they understand communication will help them when they're at school. Another thing to do at home is to reinforce the lessons, especially for younger children and for areas like literacy where they can see your mouth. So read to them, ask them to read to you if they're at reading level, and let them know, so tell me what you guys learned today in school. The concerns are not unfounded, but we do know that kids adapt. And so we're counting on the fact that kids are going to probably adapt more easily than the adults do in terms of learning. And you'll pick up from their cues and from what they tell you how it's going and adjust accordingly. Taking a deep breath, again, before you talk to your child about what's happening in the world, making sure that you've come to terms with how you feel about what's happening in the world so that you don't enter the conversation with the weight of your feelings, and turning the news off around the kids will all help. Then when you do talk to kids, first start with, so you may have noticed, and then fill in that blank with whatever piece of the news cycle you want to bring up. You may have noticed people are still wearing masks. You may have noticed there's a lot of unrest. You may have noticed whatever it is, there is so much right now. After you say that, let them tell you what they've noticed. Ask them what they know. Tell me what you know about that. Tell me what you think about that, so that you can find out where they are coming from and start from there. So you don't give them too much information or too little information. You're first collecting information from them, getting a gauge on how they're feeling, and then ask them if they have any questions for you, so that you're the first resource they turn to clarify any confusion, to let them know that they're safe, and so that you can continue to have a deeper and more meaningful conversation about what's going on in the world. The most important thing to do is, as the most important parenting thing we can do, and this is going to sound heavy, but it's great news, is that it's in our control, is to help our kids by helping ourselves. So you must take care of yourself in order to take care of children. That means if you are feeling this anxiety, do the things that you know are important to manage your own anxiety. That means, on a basic level, check in with your sleep, your food, and your exercise. Make sure you're doing the things that help you set the day up with the possibility of feeling a little bit better. Next, accept the anxiety. It's very reasonable. Give yourself a break. It makes sense to feel anxious. We're in a challenging time. But we also know that we're doing everything that we can. And take a deep breath and ask yourself, what are the things in my control as a parent that are going to make me feel better about all of the things that are going on in the world? And really focus on what you can control, because those are productive worries. You can do something about them. Then the stuff that's really worrying you and you absolutely have no control over it, set aside time every day to think about those things for about 10 minutes, and then promise yourself you'll get back to them tomorrow, but now you're done, so that it doesn't impact everything about you and your tone when you're around your kids, your energy when you're around your kids. You need your physiology to have a statement that doesn't impact your kids' anxiety. Those deep breaths can really help. A meditation practice can help. If meditation doesn't work for you, and there are tons of free online apps, Calm, Headspace, you name it, just put it in the app search bar, just to check in and give your body a chance to calm down and regulate. The last thing to do is, again, to think of anxiety as something that is adaptive, something that will help in times of emergency, but that you don't need it to be on super high alert right now, because in that moment you are safe and your kids are safe. Take a moment to check in with yourself each time you have this conversation with your kids, and try to avoid constant talking about COVID-19, reading new articles, and then relaying them to other adults in your life. Your kids are listening. And it helps you not practice feeding that anxiety. So again, you can set aside a certain amount of time for information, a certain amount of time for worries, but then make a practice of stopping and giving yourself permission to wait until tomorrow. And that way you give yourself time to readjust, reconnect with your kids, and change the tone of the household. If the things that I previously mentioned just feel impossible, that it's an impossible burden, which is, again, really reasonable right now. This is an enormously stressful time. You are parents of the pandemic. It's a lot. If you cannot function day to day without that constant cycle in your head, and you need help taking care of yourself, if you can't manage your sleeping, eating, and health patterns, if you feel in any way out of control beyond what is reasonable given the circumstances, or if you just want space to talk to someone, it's urgent that you get professional help. So one final thought is, we're all doing our best. We are parents of the pandemic. It is a challenging time. We do know that the most powerful environmental impact on children is having one loving and supportive caregiver. And with that, children can experience challenges and come out thriving.